Brilliant. So Seconds Out, delighted to present the latest edition of DiBella's Digest with Lou DiBella, of course. Lou, how's your week been?
It's a beautiful sunny day. No one in my family's sick. I'm not going to complain. And by the way, today the Nevada Commission approved those initial top rank dates. So it looks like within about 2-3 weeks now, we'll have some boxing back in the U.S.
It appears like all the major promoters on both sides of the Atlantic are going to stick with a regular premises to put on shows, at least for the time being. I think Top Rank have got the MGM, of course. Eddie Hearn's talking about presenting events in Matchroom HQ. Frank Warren looking at BT Studios.
What the fuck is Matchroom HQ? Isn't that like somebody's house?
No, well, they've got, it's kind of a converted mansion, I suppose, but it's been their office for quite a long time.
Well, I got to tell you something. That's quite an office. I mean, that is. I was going to say I couldn't put on a fight in my backyard, but I think that it looks pretty cool. I mean, I think that I respect any ingenuity and innovation and creativity right now. So I'm okay with it. I'm down with it.
Do you think it makes sense in the same way you've talked about the UFC contingent in the past that promoters in boxing at the moment are sticking to one set venue, at least for the time being, while restrictions?
There's no choice. I mean, the only way you can do this right now, and particularly in the States, and maintain and fit within the regulations that are imposed on doing live sports, you have to have no audiences, and you pretty much have to be in one place. So I think that is the new norm temporarily. And similarly, I think the new norm temporarily is that you're probably not going to see the mega kind of fights until we have a little bit of time to return to a greater sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because throughout this period of kind of uncertainty.
And by the way, Danny, I'm going to look really smart after all this because you and I have been predicting stuff and talking for a long time, and you're going to see that the stuff I've been saying is the way it's going to go.
Like modern day Nostradamus.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, look, I think Eddie's going to stick with fights initially that the majority of which are Brit against Brit, a UK fights, so that there isn't travel involved. Everybody's looking to be responsible, do the right thing right now, and that means working within these constraints. I think Top Rank has a few fights I expect to be really good fights, but they're not coming back initially with the biggest names and the biggest fights. That's not happening. And it was pretty easy to prognosticate a slow return to a greater sense of normal. Not normal, a greater sense of normal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because during this uncertain period, fans have been told regularly by different people in boxing, when boxing comes back with the limited time period, the bottleneck, you're going to see some great fights. These fights have to be made. But the initial fights aren't necessarily of the top level variety, and not just in terms of top names, but not necessarily the most well matched either. Are fans just going to be grateful to see any live boxing at this stage?
Yes, and by the way, you're going to see hungry fighters fighting, and I expect even some of the fights that are made where people aren't overly excited on paper. I think you might see better fights than you're anticipating because there are a lot of variables. Fighters aren't used to coming out with no gym time. Fighters aren't used to fighting without having appropriate sparring. Fighters aren't used to fighting in front of no one. And so I think that there's going to be an adjustment period. And I think that look, I mean, the way UFC fans wanted to see MMA, boxing fans want to see boxing. So I think that these early fights will still get attention and do ratings. I think they'll get attention and do ratings in the UK at Matchroom headquarters. And I think that they'll get attention and do ratings in Nevada when Top Rank comes back, even though the fights are not of a huge magnitude, it's still a return to boxing. It also makes sense. You don't come right back when you're figuring everything out. You don't come right back with your biggest and best and most expensive stuff. The other thing that, you mentioned the matchups. Fighters have to adjust to the readjustment of purses. You and I talked about this over the course of the last several months. We're not coming back to the same economy. We're not coming back to the same economic reality. We're not coming back to the same revenue streams. So initially, the fights that are happening involve fighters that are willing to go in on short notice and fight for money that is appropriate to them, but not the top of the market. And I think that's how we're creeping back in. I also think that there are going to be adjustments, even involving the fighters that are used to getting paid much bigger purses. But those adjustments are going to take time. And also, fighters that have firm contracts set for big minimums aren't going to let their promoters off the hook so easily.
I guess we need a level of understanding from fans as well that the bigger fights will come in time. But at this stage, just be happy that boxing's happening. And the Top Rank shows there's going to be 2 in a week, which we would never have seen if this hadn't happened.
Yeah, you're going to see 2 in a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, weeknights. Look, there's going to be a big demand. Believe me, I'll be pinned to my television on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as I think will every, real boxing head will be watching. I mean, I actually expect ESPN to do, I'm not going to say incredible ratings, but strong ratings. The way, look, last night I watched, actually it turned out to be a brilliant race. I'm not a race car fan, right? And I watched this truck racing last night, and it was on FS1. It was on Fox, and I got to tell you, it was exciting, and it was live sports, and I enjoyed it. And by the way, it was a really competitive, fun race. And I would never watch a race. I would never watch an auto race before. Never. I mean, maybe the Grand Prix of Monaco or the Indianapolis 500 or the Daytona 500 of IndyCar kind of thing. But I would never watch a truck race normally. But I enjoyed it. It was something to watch. So I think that sports fans, particularly, look, right now, boxing is going to come back on ESPN before hockey, before basketball, before baseball, before any form of football. So, yeah, I think that those initial fight cards, even though they may not be household names, I think there's going to be good viewership. And I think that'll help a little bit with boxing. But small steps in the beginning.
The latest concept to come from the fertile mind of Eddie Hearn, and this I have to credit Ron Lewis on Boxing Scene for breaking this earlier, is that the AJ Pulev fight may now go to a small venue in London, around 1,000 people, but it'll be dressed up as kind of a different type of event, so with a pre-fight dinner, glitzy kind of thing, post-fight party.
I think that's good. I've already looked into, again, I can't do anything in the New York area for months. I can't work fucking right now, and it's driving me crazy. And in 3 businesses, I can't work right now. All I'm doing is trying to figure out how to pay bills, you know what I mean, and dodge around and be creative. But I see that, the Pulev fight, you social distancing, tables, fine champagne, nice wines, safe service, and in a room where maybe you could put 1,000 people in a room distanced, and people are socializing with their own groups that they're already been quarantined with. And you can get some, I think in that kind of circumstance, there are wealthy people. The kind of people that would buy the first few rows of an AJ fight are going to buy a VIP table. And by the way, in typical fashion, during this shit, who gets richer? The rich.
Sure.
American billionaires, their net worth is increasing during this period of time. And I'm sure the same is true for some of the wealthiest people in the UK and in Europe. So, I can see that idea. I think that's just intelligent. It's not rocket science, but I respect Eddie for going in that direction. That's the way to go. I mean, certainly AJ and Pulev it's a heavyweight championship fight. AJ is still a superstar. And will there be 500 people or 1,000 people willing to pay top dollar for a VIP situation and getting to see a live event in person when everybody else is dying for that? Yeah, okay, it's not going to be you and I that are going to be buying tickets to that. No. But I think there's a place for it, and I think it is the kind of creativity that we're going to need as an industry. So look, Eddie's not a moron. I mean, Eddie's looking and assessing the marketplace, and it's an intelligent kind of thought. I'm having those same thoughts. And by the way, there are going to be wedding venues and other venues that are not going to be heavily used in the States until there's a vaccine. So it may create on even smaller shows the opportunity to do that, because I think that people with the means want to go to see live sports, so that may create a little bit of a niche. We have to look at different ways of doing things in this environment.
Eddie's also talked about sending the Chisora Usyk fight perhaps out to the highest bidder somewhere like the Middle East. There were rumours of a bid from Croatia, which he dismissed, but the idea being that they can't really sell that.
Of course, again, you got to look at alternatives. Fighters need to fight. A promoter can't afford to pay. Eddie's stuck with a lot of big. I mean, honestly, I have contracts with my fighters that are fair and equitable, etc. But I don't have a lot of these contracts where I'm guaranteeing people multi-millions to fight an ordinary fight. Eddie, Arum, Heyman, they're saddled with a lot of those contracts. They have to be creative. There's going to be use of pay-per-view for the guys that need to use it, and where the fighter has to bet on his own popularity. Do you know what I mean? And I think that there's going to be a need across the board. They're going to have to look at possibilities of finding money where it's not readily normally available. However, hard to see when oil prices are where they are, and a lot of people with means in the Middle East have, right now the oil industry is a complete mess. It's hard for me to imagine insane offers coming out of places. However, all you need is an offer. I mean, and if the offer makes the economics workable, I think you will see people go where the money is. And also, maybe the money is in some places where there isn't. Look, certainly right now, take New Zealand as an example. I have two fighters. I have Junior Fa and Hemi Ahayo, two top. I have two top heavyweights, undefeated heavyweights that fight out of New Zealand. New Zealand's down to 0 cases of coronavirus, and literally can declare a victory right now. That creates a possibility to work with a local promoter in New Zealand and put together a show for Showbox in the States and do it in New Zealand. Now, will it be crazy money? No, but at least they can do a gate. They can do a gate. So we can potentially do some things creatively. And I think promoters are going to be looking for foreign rights fees and license fees and site fees. And let's see if they materialize. But I got to tell you something. These are pretty rough times all around the world right now. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of insanity.
There's been a lot of rumours flying around recently, some of which have been denied, about DAZN potentially being in financial straits and kind of cost cutting, or looking to do some cost cutting. Was that kind of inevitable consequence of this pandemic, and that they are reliant on live sport as opposed to, I don't know, ESPN, for example, who've got a massive archive and a massive amount of money behind them?
Yes. Yeah. Look, put everything aside about the rumors and articles you're reading or whatever. You're a subscriber-based business. There's been no sports for months. You already were a loss leader, losing a lot of money attempting to build a subscribership. You can't build anything in a pandemic when no one's fighting and no one's performing in any sport. They had to stop paying rights holders because they weren't getting product. And they never even got to do their grand launch of the international app. So, and by the way, they're owned by primarily by one guy who's a multi-billionaire, but has to decide what his tolerance for pain is. So, look, I need DAZN to succeed. I'm rooting heavily for DAZN to come back with a plan and come back strong. But they certainly have business issues they're going to have to confront and decisions they're going to have to make. I don't think it's foolish of them to take their time, because you want to come back the right way, not in their situation. Look, for them to come back and bleed more money, and put on programming that's not going to bring subscribers doesn't make any sense. So I do believe that they will come back in some form. I do believe DAZN's not going to go down right now. That's my personal belief. I think you'll see changes and adjustments. But I've been saying for months that there was going to be an adjustment in the marketplace without a pandemic, because boxing has been in a bubble of big spending that hasn't really seen commensurate results. And that's been from everybody. Eddie's been spending big without the events in the States bringing huge subscribership.
Sure.
The ratings haven't been astronomical on any of the networks doing boxing. Some of them have been solid, but they haven't necessarily justified the bubble of big spending. So I think we were heading toward an adjustment without a pandemic, and the pandemic is certainly going to lead to changes and adjustments.
Before we let you go, just the standard question that everyone wants to know: how's Topolina getting on, and why is she not in the video this week?
Topolina's she's strutting around the house right now. She has her bone in her mouth. She's hanging out. She's doing really well. I need to get her trained because she's not used to people beyond my significant other and I because of all the social distancing and quarantining bullshit. So she needs to be socialized a little bit more. And she's also come to the conclusion that she can pee wherever she feels like. So I need to send her to sleepaway camp or get a trainer involved as soon as I possibly can. But she's great. She's funny and a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Well, we'll be hearing from you again next week. But until then, stay safe, of course, and we'll look forward to it.
Always a pleasure, Danny.
Cheers, Lou. Take care.